The hunter's doubt. The command came through Naira's neural implant with chilling clarity. Target acquired. Terminate the human scientist. His research threatens Viridian security. Confirmation required. Naira's fingers hovered over the response panel on her wrist gauntlet. This mission was straightforward, like countless others she had completed without hesitation during her 15 years serving the Viridian High Council. She had become their most effective hunter, trained from childhood to track and eliminate threats to their interstellar dominion. Confirmation acknowledged, she responded, her voice steady despite the strange heaviness in her chest. Something felt different about this assignment, though she couldn't identify what. The human's name was Theo Barrett. His file indicated he was researching quantum communication technologies, work the Council claimed could undermine Viridian control of interstellar communications. A simple threat to neutralize. Through the one-way observation panel, Naira studied her target. Unlike the desperate criminals or hardened rebels she typically pursued, Theo Barrett appeared utterly ordinary. Tall and lanky with unruly dark hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose, he moved around his laboratory with the distracted air of someone lost in thought. Occasionally, he would pause to scribble notes or mutter to himself. The capture had been almost disappointingly easy. One moment he was working late in his remote research station orbiting Proxima Centauri's smaller moon, the next, he was aboard her ship, confused and disoriented from the neural stunner. Now he sat in the holding cell, seemingly more fascinated than frightened by his surroundings. His calm demeanor unsettled her. Most humans would be panicking, pleading for their lives. Barrett was examining the cell's architecture with professional curiosity. Naira entered the cell, her tall, lithe form casting a shadow across the floor. Her silver-blue skin caught the light, the faint bioluminescent patterns unique to Viridian warriors glowing subtly beneath her tactical suit. Dar. Barrett, she said, her translator converting her native tongue into human English. Do you understand why you've been detained? He looked up, squinting slightly as though trying to bring her into focus. Not really. Though I assume it has something to do with my research. He tilted his head. You're Viridian, aren't you? Fascinating. I've never met one of your kind up close. His lack of fear annoyed her. Your research has been deemed a threat to galactic security. By whom? He asked, sounding genuinely curious. The Viridian High Council. Barrett laughed, a surprisingly warm sound that echoed in the sterile cell. My research is about improving agricultural communication systems on resource-poor planets. How exactly is that threatening to anyone? Naira frowned. This didn't match her briefing. You're developing quantum entanglement technology for military applications. Is that what they told you? He shook his head. May I show you something? It's in the data drive you confiscated with my other belongings. Naira hesitated. Protocol dictated she should refuse, complete her mission, and return to Viridia. But something in his steady gaze made her pause. Please, he said simply. Against her better judgment, Naira retrieved the small drive. She inserted it into her wrist computer, keeping her weapon trained on Barrett as holographic projections filled the space between them. What she saw wasn't weapons schematics or military plans. Instead, she saw images of barren worlds transformed, irrigation systems utilizing minimal water resources, communication networks connecting isolated farming communities, and quantum-linked monitoring stations tracking crop health across vast distances. 3 billion people on frontier worlds are facing starvation, Barrett explained, his voice soft but passionate. The existing communication infrastructure can't support the agricultural coordination needed to prevent famine. My system could change that. Naira scrolled through the data, her trained eyes searching for any hidden military applications. And the Viridian Council believes this threatens them how? Control, Barrett said simply. Your council maintains power partly by controlling communication networks. If independent worlds could establish their own self-sustaining networks. He trailed off, letting her connect the dots. Naira felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had always believed her mission served a greater purpose, protecting her people from genuine threats. But this was something else entirely. The council wouldn't lie about the nature of your work, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Barrett didn't argue. Instead, he asked, "What's your name?" "Naira Kell," she replied automatically, then frowned at her breach of protocol. Assassins didn't give targets their names. "Naira," he repeated, as if testing how it felt. "Do you ever question your orders?" The question struck her like a physical blow. Of course she didn't question orders. Questioning led to doubt, and doubt led to failure. Viridian hunters executed their missions with precision and detachment. It was what made them perfect weapons. Yet here she was, listening to a human who should already be dead. "You should rest," she said stiffly, retrieving the data drive. "We'll reach the Viridian outpost tomorrow." As she turned to leave, his voice followed her. "They've lied to you, Naira. And I think part of you already knows that." The door sealed behind her with a hiss, but his words remained, echoing in her mind as she retreated to the ship's command center. Hours later, sleep eluded Naira. She found herself reviewing Barrett's research again, searching for any sign of deception. There was none. His work was exactly as he'd described, brilliant, innovative, and entirely humanitarian. The realization settled over her like a shroud: the council had lied. Not just about Barrett, but likely about others she had eliminated without question. How many innocent lives had ended at her hands because she never thought to verify her orders? A voice from her training years echoed in her memory: "The perfect weapon doesn't ask why. It simply strikes." Naira had never considered herself a weapon. She was a warrior, serving the greater good of her people. But warriors had honor. Weapons didn't need it. She moved silently through the ship, returning to the holding cell. Barrett was awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor in what appeared to be meditation. "Why aren't you afraid?" she asked without preamble. His eyes opened slowly. "Would it help if I were? Most are. I've spent my life trying to solve problems bigger than myself," he said. "Death has always been a possibility. I've made my peace with that." Naira studied him with newfound respect. "Your research, it could truly help billions. If implemented correctly, yes." He stood, approaching the barrier between them. "The universe doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, Naira. Your people don't need to lose for others to win." Something shifted inside her, a certainty that had defined her existence began to crack. "The council wants you dead." "I know. I'm supposed to kill you." "I know that too." His gaze held no judgment, only a quiet acceptance that somehow made her decision both harder and clearer. Naira's hand moved to her control panel, deactivating the cell barrier. "I need to know everything about your research. And then we need to disappear." Barrett looked stunned. "You're helping me escape." "No," she said, the weight of her choice settling on her shoulders. "We're helping each other escape." The coordinates for the Viridian outpost were already programmed into the ship's navigation system. With swift movements, Naira altered them, setting course for a remote trading post in the Cygnus sector. Her actions constituted treason, punishable by a death far more painful than the quick end she'd planned for Barrett. "They'll send others after us," she warned. "The council doesn't forgive failure, especially not betrayal." Theo Barrett nodded, taking in the gravity of their situation. "Then I suppose we'd better make sure your failure was worth it." His lips curved into a smile that reached his eyes, and something unfamiliar fluttered in Naira's chest. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly. "Risking everything for someone you were sent to kill?" Naira considered the question as she initiated the jump sequence. The stars outside the viewport blurred as the ship accelerated, carrying them away from the only life she had ever known. "Because," she said finally, "I was trained to eliminate threats. Not to murder innocent people for political gain." She turned to face him fully. And because I need to know who I am when I'm not just following orders. As the ship hurtled through space, Naira felt both terror and exhilaration. For the first time in her life, she was making her own choice. And somehow, standing beside this strange human with his impossible idealism, it felt right. The council had sent her to end a threat. Instead, she might have found something worth fighting for. Defiance and flight. The trading outpost on Helios Station hung like a tarnished jewel against the backdrop of swirling cosmic dust. Unlike the pristine efficiency of Viridian architecture, Helios was a chaotic blend of cultures, technologies, and species, precisely why Naira had chosen it. Here, with its countless transient visitors and minimal security protocols, they might briefly disappear. Keep your head down, Naira instructed as they disembarked. She had traded her distinctive Viridian armor for nondescript civilian clothing, though nothing could disguise her silver-blue skin or the luminescent patterns that marked her as a hunter. And stay close. Theo nodded, pulling the hood of his borrowed jacket lower over his face. His eyes, however, kept darting around in barely concealed wonder at the diversity of alien species bustling through the crowded docking bay. I've only seen most of these species in research databases, he whispered. A towering Krex lumbered past, its 4 arms carrying various cargo containers with casual ease. Focus, Naira reminded him, though she found his curiosity strangely endearing. We need supplies, information, and a way to mask this ship's signature. The council will have already dispatched hunters. The realization of what she'd done was finally settling into Naira's consciousness. For 15 years, she had been the council's perfect weapon, unflinchingly loyal, ruthlessly efficient. Now she was a traitor, hunted by the very organization that had shaped her from childhood. They navigated through the crowded marketplace, Naira's senses heightened for any sign of pursuit. Every passing Viridian trader caused her pulse to spike, though she maintained an outward calm that belied her inner turmoil. There, she said, gesturing subtly toward a shop tucked between 2 larger establishments. Roan is an old acquaintance. If anyone can help us disappear, it's him. The shop interior was dimly lit and cluttered with technological components from a dozen different worlds. Behind a counter piled high with circuit boards sat Roan, a Telosian with mottled gray skin and 6 independently moving eyes, each scanning different sections of his shop. Naira Kel, he said, all eyes suddenly fixing on her. Unusual to see a Viridian hunter in my establishment. Even more unusual to see one trying to blend in. His gaze shifted to Theo. With a human, no less. We need your help, Roan, Naira said, keeping her voice low. No questions asked. The Telosian made a clicking sound that might have been amusement. Questions are how I stay alive, Hunter. But perhaps we can come to an arrangement. 2 of his eyes swiveled back to focus on his work while the others remained on his visitors. What exactly do you require? Ship modifications to mask Viridian tracking signals. New identification codes. And information, specifically, any chatter about Viridian hunter deployments in this sector. Roan's skin rippled in what Naira recognized as concern. You're running from your own kind. That's unprecedented. Can you help us or not? Theo interjected, stepping forward. The Telosian studied him for a moment. You must be quite valuable for a hunter to risk everything. He is, Naira confirmed, her hand instinctively moving closer to her concealed weapon. Now name your price. After negotiating terms, which cost Naira nearly all her accumulated mission credits, Roan agreed to modify their ship and provide the necessary intelligence. It will take several hours, he informed them. I suggest you find somewhere inconspicuous to wait. Helios has many eyes, and not all are as discreet as mine. They found temporary refuge in a small lodging establishment catering to non-humanoid species, where their presence would draw less attention. The room was sparse but secure, a luxury neither could take for granted now. I never thought I'd be grateful for uncomfortable alien furniture, Theo remarked, settling onto a seat clearly designed for a species with different anatomical requirements. Naira remained standing, her posture tense as she monitored the single viewport overlooking the docking bay. Once the ship modifications are complete, we need to head to the Lyra system. There's a research outpost there with minimal Viridian influence. Your work could continue. Theo looked up at her, his expression thoughtful. And what about you? What happens to Naira Kell once she delivers the fugitive scientist? The question caught her off guard. In truth, she hadn't thought beyond ensuring Barrett's escape and, by extension, her own survival. What place was there in the galaxy for a Viridian hunter who refused to hunt? I haven't decided, she admitted. Stay, he said simply. Work with me. Your knowledge of Viridian technology could help implement the communication systems more effectively. Naira almost laughed at the absurdity of his proposal. You want to work with someone who was sent to kill you? I want to work with someone who chose not to kill me, he corrected. Someone who was brave enough to question orders when she realized they were wrong. Before she could respond, a soft beeping from her wrist communicator interrupted them. A message from Roan, modifications complete, but trouble approaching. Viridian vessels had been detected entering the Helio system. They found us faster than I anticipated, Naira said, already gathering their few belongings. We need to move. They slipped through the station's service corridors, Naira leading with the confident efficiency that had made her the Council's most valued hunter. Twice they had to hide as station security patrols passed, likely alerted to watch for a Viridian and human traveling together. When they finally reached the docking bay, Naira spotted their ship, now bearing different identification markings and subtle structural modifications to alter its profile. But her relief was short-lived as she caught sight of a familiar figure examining the neighboring vessels. Tarek, she whispered, instinctively pulling Theo into a shadowed alcove. Another hunter? Theo asked, his voice barely audible. Naira nodded, her mind racing. Tarek Voss was second only to herself among the Council's elite hunters, methodical, relentless, and completely devoted to the Council's will. She had trained alongside him for years. We can't reach the ship while he's there, she murmured, assessing their limited options. And more will be coming. Theo's expression grew determined. We need a distraction. Before Naira could stop him, he slipped from their hiding place and approached a cluster of maintenance droids working nearby. With quick, precise movements that surprised her, he manipulated something in their control panels. Moments later, alarms blared across the docking bay as the droids began erratically spraying fire-suppressant foam in all directions. In the ensuing chaos, Naira saw Tarek move toward the commotion, his attention momentarily diverted. Now, she hissed, grabbing Theo's arm and making a dash for their ship. They were halfway there when Tarek spotted them. His hand went to his weapon, but the crowded bay and continuing confusion from the malfunctioning droids prevented a clear shot. Go! Naira pushed Theo ahead as she spun to face her former comrade. Their eyes locked across the distance, hunter to hunter, Viridian to Viridian. For a heartbeat, something like regret crossed Tarek's features. Then his expression hardened, and he began pushing through the crowd toward them. Naira didn't wait. She turned and sprinted the remaining distance to their ship, sealing the airlock behind her as Theo initiated the launch sequence. He'll alert the others, she said, taking control of the navigation systems. We'll have minutes at most before they lock down the station. The ship hummed to life, Roan's modifications making the engines quieter than before. As they disengaged from the docking clamps, Naira caught a final glimpse of Tarek watching from the bay, his communicator already at his lips. Hold on, she warned as she overrode the station's departure protocols, forcing the external doors open before receiving clearance. The ship shot from the docking bay, accelerating hard enough to press them both back into their seats. Behind them, two Viridian pursuit vessels emerged from the station, weapons already charging. Can we outrun them? Theo asked, his knuckles white as he gripped the console. Not conventionally, Naira replied, her fingers dancing across the controls. But I know something they don't. She banked the ship sharply, heading straight for the densest part of the cosmic dust cloud surrounding Helios, an area most pilots avoided due to navigational hazards. The dust interferes with Viridian targeting systems, she explained, expertly weaving through the swirling particles. They'll have to pursue manually, which gives us an advantage. The pursuing ships followed, but more cautiously. Naira pushed their vessel to its limits, using her intimate knowledge of Viridian tactics to stay just ahead of their hunters. There's a jump point on the other side of this cloud, she said. If we can reach it, we can make it to Lyra before they track our trajectory. Energy blasts from the pursuing vessels lit up the dust around them, most missing by significant margins but each shot coming incrementally closer as the hunters adjusted their approach. They're adapting faster than I expected, Naira muttered, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that strained the ship's structural integrity. A direct hit rocked their vessel, sending warning lights flashing across the control panel. Stabilizers damaged, Theo reported, trying to reroute power. We're losing maneuverability. Naira's mind raced. They were still 2 minutes from the jump point, an eternity in a space pursuit. Another hit like that would disable them completely. There's another way, she said suddenly, her eyes fixed on a particularly dense section of the dust cloud. But it's risky. Riskier than being captured by people who want us both dead. Theo asked with a wry smile that somehow calmed her racing thoughts. Naira altered course, heading for what appeared to be a solid wall of swirling cosmic debris. In the Hunter Corps, there's a maneuver we're explicitly forbidden from attempting except in the most desperate circumstances. It's called the Shade Dive. As she spoke, she began shutting down non-essential systems, including parts of their shields. We're going to cut power, use minimal thrusters, and let the dust cloud's electromagnetic properties mask our signature completely. Won't that leave us vulnerable to the debris? Theo asked, though he was already helping to shut down systems. Extremely, Naira confirmed. Which is why hunters are forbidden from doing it. Too many died in training attempts. Their pursuers were closing rapidly now, clearly sensing their prey was weakening. Do it, Theo said, his trust in her evident in his steady gaze. Naira initiated the power-down sequence, leaving only minimal life support and the most basic maneuvering thrusters online. The ship went dark around them as they plunged into the thickest part of the dust cloud. Almost immediately, they felt the impacts of countless particles against the hull, each one a tiny collision that collectively created a constant roar around them. Navigation was nearly impossible. Naira was flying by instinct and memory now, her Viridian senses attuned to the subtle gravitational fluctuations within the cloud. Behind them, the pursuing vessels hesitated at the edge of the dense cloud, unwilling to follow what appeared to be a suicide run. Minutes stretched like hours as they drifted through the swirling chaos, both holding their breath each time a larger piece of debris scraped against their hull. When they finally emerged on the other side, the pursuing ships were nowhere to be seen. It worked, Theo breathed as Naira rapidly brought their systems back online. Without wasting a moment, she plotted the jump to the Lyra system and engaged the drive. The stars around them stretched into streaks of light as the ship leapt into hyperspace, carrying them away from immediate danger. Only then did Naira allow herself to exhale. She turned to find Theo watching her with an expression of wonder and something else, something that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with their narrow escape. You still haven't answered my question, he said softly. What happens to Naira Kell now? In that moment, looking at this human who had somehow changed everything, Naira realized the truth. There was no going back to who she had been. The perfect weapon had developed a conscience, and with it, the capacity for choice. I think, she said, reaching hesitantly to touch his hand, that depends on whether a former hunter and a brilliant scientist can find a way to work together. Theo's fingers intertwined with hers, so different in color and form, yet somehow fitting perfectly. I've always believed in finding unexpected solutions to impossible problems. As their ship carried them toward an uncertain future, Naira felt something unfamiliar blossoming within her, hope, perhaps, or the beginning of something that neither her training nor her former life had prepared her for. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the hunter who chose compassion over duty, and the scientist who saw potential where others saw only a weapon. The Viridian Council had sent her to end a threat. Instead, she had found something worth living for.